Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Roosevelt High School, in the small town of Franklin, was waking up to the oppressive May heat. The fans whirred idly on the ceiling of room 204, but nothing really calmed the nervousness of the math students. On the board, Mr. Whitaker, a lean man in his 50s with a sharp gaze, was writing a complex equation. His precise gestures made the chalk squeak against the black surface, like a sonic provocation. He had a reputation for never missing an opportunity to ridicule those he considered weak. That morning, his gaze swept the class before settling on a quiet student sitting in the back row, Elijah Carter, a 16-year-old black boy, tall, thin, often silent. Whitaker gave a wry smile, the kind that always signaled a cruel scene. "You, Carter, come show us your skills," he called loudly. "Solve this in front of everyone. Let's see if you can keep up." The class chuckled softly. Some exchanged knowing glances, others were already sneaking out their phones. Everyone knew the teacher had just set a trap. Elijah stood up slowly. His eyes shone with a light that no one really noticed. Behind his calm, there was neither fear nor panic, only a strange confidence, as if he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. And as he walked towards the board, the screeching of the chalk seemed to herald the beginning of an equation much greater than a simple exercise, that of a silent revenge, that of a genius that no one had seen coming. Elijah Carter now stood in front of the board, the cold chalk between his fingers. Stares weighed on him like a burning spotlight. Some students whispered, others waited for the moment he stumbled to laugh. Mr. Whitaker crossed his arms, his tight smile deepening his wrinkles. "So, Carter, show us. Unless it's too complicated for you." A burst of laughter rippled through the room. Elijah didn't react. He took a deep breath and studied the equation. Before him was a seemingly indigestible system, nested fractions, square roots, and endless unknowns. The kind of problem that could make an average student lose their footing. But Elijah was not an average student. In his mind, the equation didn't resemble an insurmountable wall, but a puzzle whose pieces were waiting to be placed. His eyes scanned the symbols, and already he saw a path, a hidden logic. He lifted the chalk and, with quiet assurance, traced the first transformation. The dry sound of wood on slate silenced the last murmurs. "Well, he knows his basics," Whitaker said mockingly. "Go on, let's see where you're going wrong." Elijah continued. His movements were precise, quick, almost elegant. Where others would have erased and started over, he moved forward without hesitation, as if he had already solved this problem the day before in a dream. He factored, simplified, rearranged. The recalcitrant equation transformed under his fingers into a clear, limpid, unstoppable sequence. The snickers died down one by one. The entire class froze, their eyes fixed on him. After a few minutes, Elijah placed one last equal sign, then circled the final solution with a calm gesture. He put down the chalk, turned around, and said simply, "So." Silence. A heavy, almost unreal silence. A student in the back let out an impressed whistle. Another, Elijah's best friend, Sophia Nguyen, smiled proudly. Mr. Whitaker, however, remained frozen for a few seconds, as if the ground had just given way beneath his feet. Then he sneered, his voice less assured. "Interesting, probably a stroke of luck." But in his eyes, Elijah saw something else, the fear of a man who understood he had just underestimated someone much greater than he imagined. And without knowing it, the whole room had just witnessed the first crack in the professor's mask. In the halls of Roosevelt High School, rumor spread faster than a summer brush fire. "Did you see Carter? He solved the equation like a pro." "No, seriously? I swear. But in my opinion, he cheated." "Yeah, there's no way he could have figured that out on his own." The students commented, each adding a layer of doubt or sarcasm. Some downplayed it, others made excuses to avoid admitting what they had seen. Elijah, however, walked down the hall with his bag slung over his shoulder, not responding. Beside him, Sophia Nguyen, his best friend since childhood, shook her head. They're incredible. You put the truth in front of them, and they still find an excuse not to believe it. Elijah shrugged slightly. They accept that we play the role they expect of us, but not that we rewrite the script. They stopped in front of the lockers. Sophia stared at him, a little worried. Aren't you afraid Whitaker will try to frame you again? He won't bear the loss of face. Elijah sighed. It's not me he wants to destroy. It's the idea that a guy like me could humiliate him. In the evening, at his house, the atmosphere was different. His mother, Dr. Renee Carter, head nurse at the city hospital, was waiting for him in the kitchen. She had already heard about the incident. So, is it true? You nailed your teacher in front of the whole class? She asked, a small smile on her lips. Elijah nodded, not particularly proud. Yes, but I feel like it won't stop there. Renee placed her hand on his, firm and gentle at the same time. Elijah, listen to me. Your intelligence is a gift, but your dignity is your most precious weapon. Never let someone take one away from you to steal the other. Later, in his room, Elijah pulled out a battered notebook filled with formulas, proofs, and diagrams. Each page was silent evidence of nights spent exploring worlds his classmates couldn't even imagine. He didn't need recognition. But he knew that sometimes, to break down certain walls, silence wasn't enough, a thunderclap was needed. On Monday morning, Elijah walked into school and knew immediately that something had changed. Conversations stopped as he walked by, eyes turned toward him with a newfound curiosity. It was no longer just rumor. That was the proof. Someone had filmed the scene with their phone. 37 seconds of Elijah solving the equation, unperturbed, while Mr. Whitaker, arms crossed, waited for his failure. The video spread all weekend on the students' social media channels, and then beyond. Look at this guy, he's a math freak. Did you see the teacher's face? Priceless. But wait, don't you think he'd already seen the exercise? In the staff room, Mrs. Alvarez, the principal, showed the video to Mr. Whitaker. She let the clip play silently until the image froze on Elijah circling his solution. Do you have an explanation? She asked coldly. Whitaker cleared his throat. I was testing his limits. He got lucky. Chance? She repeated incredulously. What I see is a brilliant student and a teacher who seeks to publicly humiliate him. This is not acceptable. Whitaker looked away, annoyed. For the first time, his authority was wavering. Meanwhile, at the Carter's house, the phone vibrated. Renee read an unexpected message. Hello, Dr. Carter. My name is Alan Pierce, professor of mathematics at Boston University. I saw your son's video. What he demonstrated exceeds the level expected of a high school student. I would like to meet him. Would it be possible to speak with you? Renee froze, reread the message several times, then looked up at Elijah, who was reading a physics book on the couch. A slight smile played on his lips. Well, my son, it seems that your little moment in class has opened a much bigger door than you imagine. The noise from the video hadn't just affected the students. In room 204, Mr. Whitaker's wounded ego was boiling. He had built his reputation on his authority and sarcasm. That a student, and especially this student, was able to silence him in front of an entire class was an unbearable humiliation for him. A week later, he made an announcement in the middle of class. Dear students, he said in a falsely enthusiastic tone, to encourage excellence, I am organizing a math tournament intern at the high school. This will be an opportunity for everyone to show their talent, or their limits. All eyes immediately turned to Elijah. Sophia frowned. She immediately understood that this so-called tournament was nothing more than a carefully prepared trap. As she left the class, she whispered to her friend. It's crystal clear. He wants to bring you down in front of everyone. Elijah shrugged. Maybe. But if he wants a scene, then he'll get a scene. In the days that followed, the whispers grew. Some students saw Elijah as a future champion, others eagerly awaited his failure to prove he was just a fluke. It was then that Ms. Patel, the head of the high school math team, came to find him. "Elijah," she said softly, "I saw the video. What you did was remarkable. We need a team captain. You never made the tryouts, but I think you could take us far." Elijah hesitated. "You know, I don't like begging to go through doors that weren't meant to open for me." Ms. Patel smiled understandingly. "Then don't beg. Push them in." This sentence remained engraved in his mind. The tournament was no longer just Whitaker's trap. It had become an opportunity, the chance to turn humiliation into triumph, and to write a chapter that no one would forget. A few days before the famous tournament, Elijah received an official invitation. The Professor Alan Pierce, from Boston University, wanted to meet him. His mother insisted that he accept. One Saturday morning, they took the train to the university campus. The contrast struck Elijah: the majestic red brick buildings, the imposing libraries, the hallways filled with bright-eyed students. Here, one breathed a different air, the air of possibilities. In a small, bright room, Alan Pierce was waiting for him, a kind smile on his face. "Hello, Elijah. We've talked a lot about you these past few days. But I wanted to see for myself." He posed before him a complex, unequivocal problem of number theory. "You don't need to solve it entirely. Just tell me how you would approach it." Elijah read attentively, silently. His mind opened like a well-oiled machine. He saw first the impasse, then the escape route, an indirect approach. Calmly, he sketched out a proof, introduced a rarely used lemma, and explained how to circumvent the difficulty with an ingenious reformulation. Pierce listened to him, fascinated. Extraordinary. Most freshmen get lost in this kind of reasoning. You don't fight the problem. You listen to it, and you find where it's cracking. Elijah remains modest. "Numbers, they speak to me like a language. I'm just trying to translate." As he left, Pierce handed Renee an envelope. "This is an early admission letter to our summer program in applied mathematics. If he accepts, he will be supervised by our researchers." On the train back, Sophia, to whom Elijah had told, exploded with enthusiasm via text. "Do you realize? This is an incredible opportunity." But Elijah, he kept one fixed idea. "All this is great," he thought, "but before university, there's a fight to be fought here. I don't just want to succeed elsewhere. I want my school to understand that I don't owe my place to luck, but to my work." And already he was preparing for the Whitaker tournament, determined to turn this trap into a springboard. The Roosevelt High School gymnasium had been transformed into a makeshift exam room. Chairs lined up, large tables, a central blackboard, and a crowd of spectators, parents, students, and a few local journalists intrigued by the viral video. Mr. Whitaker, in his gray suit, led the ceremony with a honeyed voice. "Welcome to this first Mathematical Excellence Tournament. Today we will see which brilliant minds of Roosevelt deserve our admiration." The implication was clear: he wanted the audience to see him regain control. Elijah took his seat in the front row. Sophia, sitting right behind him, whispered to him, "Breathe. Remember, you're not here for him. You're here for you." The first test began. Diophantine equations. The students frowned, erased, and started again. Elijah watched for a minute, then calmly jotted down 3 lines: existence, framing, construction. Problem solved. A surprised proctor looked up at Whitaker, who looked away. Second test, optimization under constraints. The candidates laboriously attempted derivatives and approximations. Elijah introduced a Lagrange multiplier with almost artistic fluidity. The net result. The audience began to murmur. Some parents took notes, others took out their phones. Then came the surprise question, concocted by Whitaker himself, a deliberately twisted problem, poorly written, full of ambiguities. A trap. Elijah read it once, frowned slightly, then raised his hand. "Sir, the statement is ambiguous." There are two possible interpretations. May I resolve both? An icy silence filled the room. Whitaker, taken aback, finally blurted out. Yes. So Elijah complied. Patiently, he developed two distinct solutions, each perfectly coherent. When he put down his chalk, the room erupted in applause. Some students even stood up to film the scene. The moment was clear. Elijah was no longer the student being tested, but the teacher giving meaning back to chalk. Whitaker, pale, clenched his fists. This tournament he had designed to re-establish his authority had turned into a public triumph for Elijah. And that was just the beginning. The classroom was still plunged into that peculiar silence, the one that follows a revelation that no one expected. Professor Richard Hale, still frozen in front of the blackboard, struggled for words. The equation he had thrown out as a provocation had been solved not only correctly, but with a mathematical elegance that few of his colleagues could match. "It's impossible," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the steps traced in a sure and fluid handwriting. The students began to whisper, some even bursting into laughter at their teacher's astonishment. Jamal, however, remained standing, calm, chalk still in hand. "I told you I knew the answer, sir," he said in a calm voice, without arrogance. Richard Hale felt his face flush. He had wanted to ridicule a student, but he was the one who had just been publicly disarmed. Shame mingled with anger, which he tried as best he could to contain. Just because you found a solution doesn't mean you truly understand," he tried to retort, hoping to regain some semblance of authority. But before he could continue, one of the students in the front row raised his hand. "Sir, what Jamal wrote is exactly the method you taught us at the beginning of the year, but faster." Another added laughingly. "It even seems like he knows things you never explained to us." The professor stiffened. Every comment was a blow to his already fragile ego. As for Jamal, he calmly returned to his seat, under the admiring gaze of his comrades. For the first time, Richard Hale felt his authority slipping through his fingers. The humiliation he had planned for the student had just backfired, and he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The following evening, the restaurant was buzzing with excitement. Families, couples, and businessmen occupied the tables, attracted by the growing reputation of the Havens table. The atmosphere was warm, and for the first time in a long time, Leah felt completely at peace. But behind the scenes, a dull tension was rising. Megan, the head waitress, watched with concern as a group of customers sat in a discreet corner. They hadn't booked, but were demanding a table, speaking contemptuously to the staff. Leah, too, noticed their arrogance and approached calmly. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Haven's table. We are pleased to welcome you, but I ask that you respect our rules of courtesy." One of the men sneered, looking down at her. "Are you the boss? We were told this restaurant had changed management, but we didn't expect this." Leah felt her stomach tighten. She'd heard that tone before, a mixture of surprise, disdain, and provocation. But she stood her ground. "Yes, I'm the owner. And here, everyone is treated with respect, whether they're our customers or our staff." Murmurs began to spread among the other guests, who were watching the scene with increasing attention. The men, stung by their pride, tried to ridicule the incident, but Leah didn't give in for a moment. "If you cannot behave properly, I will ask you to leave the premises." It was a suspended moment. Then, unexpectedly, several customers stood up and applauded, defending Leah. The men, furious but aware that they were in the minority, eventually left under disapproving stares. As the door closed behind them, Leah took a deep breath. It was the first crack in the restaurant's perfect image, but also a victory. She had faced her demons and won a battle. Yet, deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. More difficult challenges lay ahead. The next morning, Elijah returned home, still reeling from the tournament and the applause that followed. On the living room table, an envelope waited, plain, sealed, with the Boston University logo. Renee, his mother, let Elijah open it silently. He took out the letter and read each word carefully. His eyes widened as he scanned the page. Share Elijah Carter. We have been following your exceptional performance at Roosevelt High School. Your reasoning, rigor, and creativity in mathematics far exceed the level expected for your age. We are pleased to offer you a place in our summer program in applied mathematics, with personalized mentorship from our researchers. A mixture of excitement and nervousness filled Elijah. It was recognition of all his work, of all those nights spent solving complex problems in his scribbled notebook. Will you accept? Asked Renee with a proud smile. Yes, but I also want to make sure my high school understands what I've accomplished here, he replied determinedly. Sophia, sitting on the sofa next to him, almost burst into joy. You do realize this is going to change your life, right? Elijah nodded. He knew this was a unique opportunity, but he also wanted to turn his experience at Roosevelt into something positive for all those who, like him, had been underestimated. He suggested to Ms. Patel that they create a Club Bridges, a free tutoring program for students, advanced math workshops, and a space where everyone could explore their potential without fear of judgment or ridicule. We're going to create more space for those we usually ignore, Elijah said. Exactly. And you will be the captain of this change, Sophia added with a wink. The sealed letter wasn't just an invitation to the university, it represented a responsibility and an opportunity to bring justice to all those who had been silenced. Elijah knew he couldn't let this chance slip away, either for himself or for his community. On the last day before summer vacation, room 204 was packed. Parents, students, and a few local journalists had gathered to watch the tournament's award ceremony. But Elijah, calm and confident, knew that this moment wasn't just a ceremony, it was an opportunity to change the rules of the game for good. Mrs. Alvarez, the principal, beckoned him to the blackboard. He stood, chalk in hand, and looked around the class. Everyone's eyes were on him, including Mr. Whitaker's, who remained silent, his lips pressed together. I was asked to solve an equation so that people could make fun of me, Elijah began, his voice clear. I solved it. But here's the equation I like best. He wrote confidently on the board. Respect plus demand equals learning. Take away one of these, and everything collapses. Take away respect, and even the brightest minds can break. Take away demand, and no potential can flourish. The room was silent for a few seconds, then applause erupted. The students stood up, some even moved, and the parents nodded in admiration. Elijah turned to Whitaker. I invite you to join the Bridges Club and solve problems with us. Not against us, but with us. For the first time, Whitaker felt a mixture of shame and respect. He stood up slowly. Elijah Carter, I underestimated you, and I betrayed my role as your teacher. If you will allow me, I will come and learn from you. A murmur rippled through the room. Elijah nodded in satisfaction. He hadn't just solved an equation. He'd rewritten the entire dynamics of the classroom. As the summer passed, Elijah dove into the university's applied mathematics program. But he never lost sight of Roosevelt. Every week, he returned via video conference to lead the Bridges Club with Sophia and Ms. Patel. Room 204, by the start of the next school year, had changed. Posters of mathematicians of all backgrounds adorned the walls, and students raised their hands without fear of being judged. Whitaker, more humble, listened more than he spoke. Elijah walked down the hall, aware that his victory was not just personal. He had solved a much larger equation, the one that connects genius and dignity, rigor and justice. And every time chalk squeaks on a blackboard, it is no longer a mockery, it is the signal of an idea coming to life.